were on the front line to plan and organize for protests demanding freedom and democracy. And of course, as a result of that, we were met with detention and bombings in our country, in our cities, and most importantly, the forced disappearance of my own father in 2013, July 2nd. As a result of that, my mom, my sisters, and I had to flee. We were forced to flee. And I have been living in the US ever since. When I came to the US in 2013, after I had revolted for inclusion and democracy and freedom, I came here to really find people talking about me and my rights and my family's rights without me. So I decided to change this. And I started a journey of reclaiming the narrative through storytelling and engaging with refugees throughout the world in advocacy. And that work really led me to joining Asylum Access last year and to be part of creating this amazing, outstanding coalition that led us to win this award. And that's me for now. Over to you, Mojgan.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I'm Mojgan, the Director of Refugees and Asylum Seekers Information Center in Indonesia, but I was born and raised in Iran. I had a quite comfortable middle-class life there, and I was in college when my father started having really complicated political issues, and soon after that, we were on the move and in hiding. We hid in Iran for about 2 years in different towns, and soon after that, it became too dangerous and we had to flee. So we fled to Indonesia back in 2013 with my whole family, my mom and dad and my brother, and we've been here ever since. It's been more than a decade of displacement for us all together.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Lublan Prieto.
Good morning to everyone. My name is Lublan Prieto. I'm Venezuelan, and I was born in Táchira in San Cristobal, Venezuela. And because of the humanitarian crisis in my country, I had to flee my country in 2015. I arrived to Colombia. Currently, I live in Colombia, and I am the president of Refugiados Unidos. My organization has for many years been doing work for the leadership of refugees. We provide them with legal aid, and also we open the doors to them in this very long journey that refugees experience. Today, Refugiados Unidos is a member of this coalition, and we're very proud to be a part of this coalition because they represent the same values and principles that we have, which is to empower leaders such as us so that they can continue to create solutions for the people. Thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone based on where you are located. My name is Robert Hakiza. I am the director of YARID, Young African Refugees for Integrated Development. I was born in eastern part of Congo in a small city called Bukavu. That's where I was raised and where I went to school up to 2018 when 2008 when I and my family were forced to leave the country because of the conflict and instability in the region. So in Uganda, here in Kampala, when I reached, I found already a very big refugee community. And of course, as any other refugee, we went through so many suffering and the challenges. But when I tried to look around and look at the people who were here in the community, I realized that, actually I didn't have to complain, but I had a lot to offer to the community. So that's why directly all the suffering turned into strength, and we managed, I and my colleagues, to start this great organization, Young African Refugees for Integrated Development. As any other refugee-led organization, we went through so many challenges, including the one of lack of financial, and I know there are so many thousands of refugee-led organizations outside there that are struggling despite all the good work they are doing. That's why I'm very excited to be part of this coalition, because I know it's going to support so many of them to giving them resources to implement their activities. So thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being with us today. I am Daria Jamil. I'm the head of development in Basma and Zaytoune, and I am Syrian. Back in Syria was my first experience working in the humanitarian field with the first wave of IDPs coming from rural Damascus, running from the bombing and bombardment from in their houses. In the late 2013, I had to leave Syria, as many Syrians did, and I came to Lebanon. In Lebanon, I was in search for something like I can relate to, and here I found Basma and Zaytouni. Back then, Basma and Zaytouni was a small organization established by 4 Syrian volunteers that were trying simply just to respond to the need of Syrian people, Syrian refugees newly coming to Shatila camp. Shatila camp is an underserved, overpopulated 1 kilometer square camp with 30,000 refugees, Syrians and Lebanese and Palestinians. Now, Basma and Zaytouni in Lebanon has 6 community centers in the most marginalized area, serving 15,000 refugees and Lebanese per year. These community centers are operated by refugees and local community members. We provide education for children, psychosocial support for women, vocational training for youth, and we support micro and small enterprises. Over those 8 years, working in the field with Basma and Zaytouni, I saw how refugee-led organization can impact people's life, how can they respond to the needs, and how sensitively they can work around this culture. That is why Basma and Zaytouni today is very much enthusiastic to be part of this coalition. Thank you for being with us today.
Hi everyone, this is Mohammed. I am a refugee from Sudan and the Director of Programs at St. Andrews Refugee Services, STARS, in Cairo, Egypt. And here in STARS, we provide wraparound services to around 40,000 refugees every year. I think one of the vital needs of every individual is to have control over their lives, to have the opportunity to try and succeed. The displacement experience I have personally took that away from me, among other things as well. I believe that this project is meant to prevent this. It is intended to empower forcibly displaced people to take control over their lives, to live in dignity, and to become less dependent on people who have little awareness of the displacement experience. I see this project as a great opportunity for change. I see it as a global movement. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Diana Essex-Latieri. I'm the Vice President of Asylum Access and have worked here for almost a decade. I started my career working in refugee camps in Zambia, where people had been living without basic freedoms and rights since as early as 1970. And those years in Zambia created in me a really deep desire to examine and reorient a system that could permit this to happen. And I have found in Asylum Access and with this coalition, the kind of people that will always seek to put real solutions at the heart of its efforts, and who are always willing to do that re-examination and that reorientation. It has been my sincere pleasure to collaborate with this coalition. Thank you for coming. I also have the pleasure of explaining who we are as a group, together with my colleague, Daria Jamil. And I'll start with how we came together. So as a family of national civil society organizations, Asylum Access believes at its core in the power of proximate solutions. We know from our own experiences that those closest to displacement are best placed to confront the obstacles that face their communities. And so as the movement for refugee leadership in refugee response grew stronger, and as calls for refugee participation were showing up in prominent spaces like 2019's Global Refugee Forum, Asylum Access's staff and board naturally asked the question of where do we fit? How do we help this movement? And when the call for the Larson Lamb Iconic Impact Award hit our inboxes, the path forward was clear. This was the opportunity to convene extraordinary organizations, these folks on the line who are movement leaders, and some of the most established refugee-led organizations in the world, already serving thousands per year. We came together to build our solution from the ground up. Daria, I'd love to hand it over to you to share who we've become as a group and what makes us special.
Sure, let's do that. So the Resource and Refugee Leadership Coalition is a global coalition working in 6 countries. We share a belief that movement led by those most affected are most likely to be successful. With that in mind, it is in our vision that refugees should be leading refugees' response. And this is the type of partnership our sector should be looking to follow. And let me tell you why. This partnership is not only on paper, it's not only word, it's a true partnership. And it was a true collaborative work. Let me give you some examples. We've built our values together. We've been totally transparent with each other. I can give you an example of when we were designing this program, how we all shared our budget together, and even our convening partner who is convening us Asylum Access shared their budget with us, asking for our approval and opinion. For the decision making, we felt directly the need to decide on our decision making module. And so to do that, we brought in a facilitator to help us identify our decision making module. At Basmea Zaytoune, and for Basmea Zaytoune, this partnership was and still unique one. And please be reminded, Basmea and Zaytoune have a very good experience in partnership during 9 years of work. So we can definitely tell when a partnership is a different one. And we really want for as much organization as possible to have this kind of partnership, to have this kind of opportunity and experience this. The result of that is that we have a truly co-owned, and everything we do now is truly co-owned. And after extensive discussion, we've honed in on both problem and solution. And we are very excited to share our approach today with you. I'm handing it over to Sana to share our problem and solution with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Daria. And so now that you've got to know us a bit more as humans, professionals, and as a coalition, we will spend the next 20 minutes sharing with you what we've been doing for the year and why we got this award. So the problem that we've really identified is that obviously there is a growing evidence of body in research that is very clear. When given the opportunities, refugees are extraordinary contributors to our communities. We're directors, we're doctors, we're chefs, we're teachers, and more. And yet there is a big disconnect because we are actually usually prevented from contributing by barriers such as legal barriers, the right to work and to move freely and to have access to healthcare and education. Let's hear more about those barriers from Indonesia. Mojgan, tell us what's happening there.
As an example of one of those barriers, I wanted to share a clip with you from my podcast. It's called The Wait. It's a 5-part series that examines the impact of the Australian border policy on refugees in Indonesia. We interviewed these kids you're going to hear from in shelters, and they are living under strict curfews and without access to education, healthcare, sanitation, or anything else. They're living in very small, overcrowded rooms. And, these shelters are run by the solutions of the international community, and government money is being put into them, and they are almost designed, to stay that way. When we went to speak with these kids, they were really desperate to talk, and they wanted their voices to be heard and shared. I suggest that you turn up your volume. This clip is about 3 minutes long.
I want to introduce myself. I'm Umid Ahmadi, and I'm from Afghanistan, and I want to talk about my life in Makassar.
I am Marza Yusufi, and I'm 16 years old. When I was born as a child of refugee. I grew up as a refugee, and I don't think I have a country because I haven't seen Afghanistan with my eyes. I haven't even been there in 1 second. I just saw Afghanistan in Google.
I'm Sarah, I'm 12 years old. I was born in Iran as an immigrant, and I was born as an immigrant. I just grew as an immigrant. I'm 11 years old, and I'm here for 6 years. And Indonesian people, kids, they're calling me immigrant. I don't like them to call me. I just like them to call me my name, and my real name is Fredun. So I'd like them to call me Fredun. I just want them to be my friends. People call us illegal. It's hard for us to be illegal. Everyone wants to be legal and have their own rights, choose how to live. I become in Indonesia in December.
Yes, December 2014.
Yeah.
So after July 2014, so it means that Australia won't resettle you.
Yes, and we want to just come out of this kind of situation.
I don't think there should be a rule like before July and after July. That's it. And I don't have any schools in here.
There are many other children who are not going to school, who are not studying, who are just staying in their room, and they just eat, sleep, nothing much.
I can communicate with my family, relatives. They are living in Afghanistan. I don't know where are they now, they are alive or not. That has so much pain for me, because I really I really want to see how are they feeling now, how they are alive or not.
Families, especially children who are suffering from depression, anxiety. Our countrymates have suicide themselves because of
they were so worried and they didn't know what to do, so they just suicide themselves, and it's really hard for us to watch them like this.
I have spent all my childhood in here. In this kind of situation, I don't really know how I have changed. Like, I can't imagine how I have changed. Refugee is a normal word for me right now, because from the day that I was born, they called me an Afghan refugee. But it's okay, it doesn't matter. What matters is this, that I should think about my future.
Thank you, Mojgan. We might all need a moment after hearing this, but you know what? There are so many more Freiduns out there, and so many more kids that still living in oppressive environments where kids aren't in school, parents cannot work, and they are just stuck in indefinite limbo. And also importantly, one's sense of agency and ownership over their life is gone. That is true for the majority of 26 million refugees in the world, that less than 1% of whom will access resettlement. Take a look at these photos of the camps of Zaatari in Jordan and Kakuma camp in Kenya. These are the homes of hundreds of thousands of refugees. And what's particularly troubling about this is that, as Mojgan said, that these are actually run by international actors. These camps are the international community solutions with billions of dollars. I mean, as a refugee and as a professional, I really don't understand how you could be working on forced displacement for 70 years with billions of dollars, and that's how we treat people. We know it doesn't have to be this way, and you know this. Many of us with different refugee-led initiatives and groups have been challenging this. And it's really nice to see many names of those who work together attending with us here. And the Resourcing Refugee Leadership Initiative is supporting and building on those existing efforts. We are refugee leaders from all over the world that are committed to our communities right now. Our work is rooted in our community interest. If Fredoon was your child or your neighbor child, you would never accept a solution that does not put Fredoon in school. You would find a way. And that's what our laws do. They have the proximate life experience necessary to drive solutions. Our laws also have the knowledge, the skill, the community connection, and most importantly, the commitment to their communities to reveal solutions. Mojgan, tell us, how did you find RAIC?
When I started RAIC, I saw that nobody was providing key services and nobody was seeking long-term solutions. So I knew that I had to start something. And some of what makes RAIC really special is that we are very accessible and deeply connected to the community. And we provide our services with cultural sensitivity, with a lot of care, and with the right languages, and most importantly, with trust. And we are very efficient and without tremendous bureaucracy. And today, I'm really proud to say that we are reaching and supporting nearly the entire refugee population of Indonesia, and also beyond that with our online programs. And how we do it is we have a holistic approach in all of this. We do legal aid and solution pathways such as resettlement through private sponsorship. We do a mental health program. We try to do psychological first aid and suicide prevention, and even a suicide hotline. With healthcare and basic needs, we are trying to fill the gaps. We do eye and dental care clinics and food and hygiene basics. And previously, before this, we were doing all of this with a budget of 30 to 40,000 USD per year, and nobody was getting paid. But with this new funding from Larsen Lam, we can sustain RAIC and we can grow the quality and quantity of our program. And we're really thrilled and excited about what's coming next.
Thank you, Mojgan. And also, let me take this opportunity actually to tell you about the work of few other of our coalition partners. We have with us Muhammad here from STARS. Muhammad and STARS in Egypt are reaching over 5,000 unaccompanied youth every year with services that provide education and vocational training for job placement. LeBlanc and Refugiados Unidos in Colombia are reaching thousands as well per year with legal support that help people get documentations, resulting in work rights and protection against deportation back to life-threatening conditions. We share our own work as examples of the impact of RLO's work on people's lives. And all this work has been done with very small budgets. And that's why we are super excited about being provided this award, the Larsen Lam Iconic Impact Award. It will offer resourcing for our coalition partners to continue their critical programming. But we also know there are so many impactful RLOs out there. And this is what also the other focus of this initiative is to address this. I know all of us dream of what would be possible when impactful RLOs around the world have access to resources, all the resources we need. And speaking of resources, where are the resources right now? What's the reality of resources? Of the nearly $30 billion flowing in the humanitarian system annually, we estimate that RLOs are receiving less than 1% annually. This is what we see the big problem. Funding flaws are not meeting funding needs. And we, as a coalition, have spent so much time trying to understand why. Why is it very hard for RLOs to receive funding? So let's hear from Muhammad, the Director of Programs at STARS, about the barriers we identified. Over to you, Muhammad.
Thank you, Sana. As we can see on the screen, we have identified 3 important barriers that refugee-led organizations face. The first one is the lack of relationships. Most funding institutions lack the relationships and knowledge of refugee-led organizations. The majority have simply no idea about the quality of work these local refugee initiatives are doing or can do. They don't know the enormous potential, the untapped potential of these initiatives. On the other side, refugee-led initiatives lack the social and financial resources to build relationship with funders. They are simply far from the headquarters of most funding institutions. The second major obstacle is institutional barrier. The majority of funders have policies and practices in place that make access to funding complex or impossible for refugee initiatives. An example of that is the highly complex nature of many funding applications, which prevents local initiatives from being even eligible to apply sometimes. The need to produce perfect materials and perfect reports visibility plans, branding, and so on. For example, in order to partner with UNHCR, you need to meet their requirements and sign their partnership guidelines, which is 243-page long, full of legal restrictions that systematically exclude refugee initiatives. A third and also a crucial barrier is bias. Refugees and refugee initiatives are seen and treated most of the time as passive beneficiaries rather than agents for change. The attitude of some NGOs and certainly UNHCR is a major obstacle. For example, in 2017, two of our managerial staff were rejected from a UNHCR training for being refugees, despite the fact that it was a UNHCR-led training on community-based protection. When we asked why, we were told that because we needed to send senior staff. And when we explained that those were actually senior staff, we were then told that their staff would not feel comfortable talking about refugees in front of our refugee staff, stating that there was a conflict of interest between their ethnic and tribal loyalties and their professional obligations. Back to you, Sana.
Thank you, Muhammad. I mean, even though I have heard this incident so many times, it still strikes me, and of course, nothing new. Those barriers that Muhammad mentioned, as he mentioned, that they're rooted in the system. But the good news is that we know how to break down those barriers. We've already broken down some, and we are in the process of breaking down more. And that is one of the major impacts of our solution. And through our work, many RLOs far and beyond our own organizations will have the resources they need to address their own struggles. The Larsen Lam Iconic Impact Award is kickstarting an effort to support 45 RLOs to access significant funding to reach over 1 million refugees with life-saving programs. Our initiative is not focused on funding any one single kind of program or approach. It's actually the opposite. We believe and we are interested in supporting RLOs that they provide holistic services that allow people to rebuild their lives with dignity, because we do not accept any less than this for our own communities. How will we do this? Let's talk about the how. How we will reach 1 million refugees with holistic programs. We will do this through two key strategies. The first one is about unlocking funding for RLOs, and the second one is about strengthening the community of RLOs globally. Together, these two strategies ensure that there is more money in the system for RLOs, and actually RLOs are able to absorb this money to grow their impact. Let me tell you a bit more about our first strategy in unlocking funding, how we will do this. We will do this through our engagement, for example, with allies, including many of you, to help you, each one of you, find a specific way to directly fund RLOs. Some allies, especially, for example, foundations, it might be only about direct connection. We have those connections. For others, like major institutions, we want to help you identify and remove barriers, such as requirements for legal registration, bank account access, application language requirements, and funding floors. But we also know that breaking down those barriers will take time. And we want to hurry that change as well. And that's why we have created the RLO to RLO Fund. The RLO to RLO Fund, what it will do, it will connect donor money, aggregate it, and redistribute it to RLOs. It will give our allies an opportunity to directly and immediately support RLOs even before they have removed the barriers to directly fund RLOs. And what's really unique about our fund is that it's the first of its kind that is run by refugees for refugees. And based on recent conversations we've been having, we estimate that through this, we might be able to unlock $40 million for RLOs within our project period. That's in our first strategy about unlocking funding. And while money is a major barrier, we know it's not the only one. We know from experience that RLOs actually also need to have the capacity to absorb this money. and this significant capital to grow their impact. And that's why we will offer multi-year capacity building support in one of our 10 target countries. We know how to succeed at this because we actually had to overcome the exact same barriers. And many of our coalition RLOs have already successful capacity building programs. What would that look like actually in this strategy? For example, each coalition partner will partner with 2 other organizations per year to help them overcome the organizational barriers to receiving funding and growing their impact. For example, we might help an organization, an RLO, to build their monitoring and evaluation system. Others get access to bank account, or just connect them with donors and advocacy initiatives. In summary, through our engagement with allies to unlock funding, and by preparing RLOs to observe this funding, communities will access holistic life-saving programs all over the world. But what does it mean in practice? What's the impact of this? Let's hear from Lou Blanc about the different impact levels of our work. Over to you, Lou Blanc.
Muchas gracias, Ana. Encantada.
Thank you very much, Sana. I'm very happy to be able to share the impact that we're going to have because we're going to reach different goals in different levels. So I'm going to explain to you in detail what we're going to do. First of all, we're going to focus within our organization. All the partners within the coalition with the Larsen Lam Award will be able to strengthen and stabilize our programs. And that's how we're going to achieve sustainability. That is why inside this coalition, our partners will strengthen themselves and we will get stronger too. And you will be able to benefit from these programs and you can look them up on social media. You will also be able to communicate with the partners and organize with them. And then in a broader sense, the Larsen Lam Award will help us raise funds and have advocacy. This will help us support 40 organizations in order to help them scale their impact and reach hundreds of millions of refugees through these organizations. And lastly, we have the result of the previous 2 levels. Dozens of organizations will join our project and a movement that already exists. As we told you, we want to tear down barriers so that all of these organizations can be part of this movement and can create solutions that are proximate and that target refugees and have a global impact so that we can all together create benefits and solutions for our refugees. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lou Blanc. So now, before we talk about how we can work together, I know that probably a prominent question on so many people's mind is that how this money will be used. And there are 2 ways to talk about money. The first way is that how we will spend the $10 million. And then the second way is that how we will spend the $10 million to raise more money for the movement. About the first way of how we will spend the first $10 million. In this slide, you can see that we're saying here, we're clarifying how 69% of the award money, the 10 million, will go directly to our coalition RLOs to grow the critical work that you just heard about, to be able to grow access to legal services and education and employment and healthcare and more. And also to put our coalition RLOs in a perfect position to actually effectively partner with other RLOs and strengthen them. This also will source the coalition participation in a large-scale fundraising and advocacy agenda that will raise more millions for other RLOs. 11% of this award will also go, we have safeguarded actually, to funding other RLOs through our RLO to RLO fund. And I'll explain in the second slide a bit more information about this. And then as you can see here in the slide, 21% of the 10 million will go to operations between management, implementation, and support. The second way we want to talk about money is how this initial investment will actually kickstart fundraising for more money for RLOs. This initial investment, it will give our team the opportunity, as I said, to create advocacy agenda and fundraising agenda that will bring more money. So as you see in green is the Larsen Lamb Award initial investment. What you see in blue is how this award is actually helping us kickstart this fundraising effort to be able to raise more money for RLOs. So in blue is the numbers that we hope to fundraise throughout the project period. Very exciting. And we know many of you want to take part of this work and this movement. And we are very keen to do this. And that's why we will talk now about how we will do that. So over to you, Robert.
Thank you so much, Sana. Great. I know there are so many of you who want to know how they can get involved. So here are the way to go. First of all, I want you to understand that this work took a village to arrive at this place. And we know that the future we envision for RLOs, where RLOs are systematically funded at scale and have full ownership and agency over their affairs, will take a bigger village. So we are here to invite you to join us. To all our allies, including foundations, UN agencies, and others, you have a major role to play in this movement. And we want to work together with you. Here are a few examples of ways we could work together. If you believe in the importance of funding RLOs, but you are not sure how to break down internal institutional barriers to directly fund RLOs, no worries, we got you. We will work with you to identify ways to break down those barriers. So please get in touch with us using the email in the chat box. We know breaking down systematic barriers takes time. So for those who want to fund RLOs directly, our RLO to RLO fund is here for you. Please, let's talk about your contribution to the fund. For those who are ready to fund RLOs and just need direct connection, we are here for you. And most importantly, we need all our voices and efforts to continue to advocate for a system where refugees are equitable access to resources to drive solution for their own communities. To our peer RLOs and refugee advocates, we have been on this journey together in different ways. So many of you are already leading major initiatives to support your communities. This movement is for all of us. Here are a few examples of how we could lift each other up and work together. One, it will take us sometimes to get organized and roll out this remarkable project. So we kindly ask you to be patient with us as we get this ship moving. Two, meanwhile, we want to share with you that part of our work is to issue grants through the RLO fund to many of you. This will officially start next year. In terms of what to expect of the grant-making process, there are a few things we know already. We will provide flexible multi-year funding to RLOs of different size, doing many different types of work. Our first round of grantees are likely to be within our current location, which are Egypt, Colombia, Uganda, Indonesia, and Lebanon, but may also extend to others. The application process will be open and transparent. While we are still developing our criteria for selection, we know we are likely to require: one, existing presence in your communities; two, strong financial and ethics controls; and three, strong leadership. As we mentioned, these projects will kick off next year, but we invite you to get ready for this process and get organized this year. You can receive news about date applications and more by signing up on the listserv. For the moment, we salute all of you for your existing efforts. Our advocacy message will continue to echo each other. We are very excited to continue on this journey with all of you. If you have other ideas or partnership, and if you would like to chat with us, please send us an email using the email shared in the chat box. And please don't forget to follow us on social media. Now, I would like to hand over to my colleague Sana for conversation. I thank you so much.
Thank you, Robert. And now we have arrived to a place where we can address some of the questions that have come up. And thank you all for those who've been asking so many interesting questions. For the next 15 minutes, I will be looking at the questions and directing them to my colleagues. So maybe one of the questions that we could answer, a question came to us is that, what was the biggest challenge that you faced when you started the Resourcing Refugee Leadership Initiative? And I feel like after we talked about this much excitement, it's good to share with you some of the realities or the challenges behind this work. So maybe Diana, would you tell us a bit more about this?
Sure, thanks for the question. Mostly this was a joy. And I think everybody on the line really feels that way. You know, there's some logistical challenges with being a global coalition that I think everybody can sort of imagine. But the passion behind making progress really prevailed over those logistical challenges. I think the real challenge here was finding an initial amount of capital that could launch something that would create systemic change. You know, when Asylum Access, I said initially that Asylum Access had been in spaces where we were hearing the calls for participation really loudly. We were hearing calls for refugee leadership and refugee response, and the barriers that Mohammed made reference to, we were seeing, but they're large, and it was hard to envision where could we possibly get this kind of initial capital that would help us to start to tackle a problem of this magnitude. And so the Larson Lamb Iconic Impact Award is one of these, what they call big bet grants, and they're few and far between. But you know, it worked out for us, and it is our sincere plan to instigate systemic shifts here. This is so much more than an opportunity to fund our work. And we look forward to sharing the opportunities with all of you as soon as we can.
Thank you, Diana. We have a question that maybe said, how has COVID pandemic brought opportunities and challenges to this initiative? Mujgan, could you tell us more about this?
Well, with COVID-19, I feel like it brought us more opportunities than challenges, because it kind of opened the space for us to be more present and more active, you know, in the field that we are working. Because when it started, most of the international NGOs, because they had, you know, international staff, they had to send their staff home and seek safety. So most of the programs were shut down. But we are in the community, you know, this is our life, and we are providing services. So we just stayed and continued our work. And after a while, most of our colleagues from the international communities were reaching out to us to, you know, provide services and support them in this. And it also, you know, provided more floors for us to speak, to participate, because most of the things that previously was happening in person were turned into online, you know, platforms and everything. So I feel like it just gave us so much more opportunities, if anything.
Thank you, Mujgan. Another question that came through is that, how can NGOs and networks support and amplify the work of this initiative and be better partners and supporters of refugee-led organizations? Maybe I will have you, Mohammed, start with this, and I know Daria might want to build up on this. So over to you, Mohammed.
Thank you, Sana. I think first of all, we need to agree that NGOs are failing refugees. They tend to work with projects, not with communities. They have failed in developing services that people can rely on and trust. These projects come and go without making real changes in people's lives. So the vast majority of the work is already being done informally by refugees. Refugee leadership and participation is indispensable and essential to any meaningful movement for change and the creation of effective interventions. When it comes to designing and implementing interventions, we believe that displaced people should not have only a seat at the table. Displaced people own the table. NGOs should have the role to help build the capacity of these initiatives instead of attempting to provide direct assistance to refugees. What's needed is for those refugee-led organizations to be properly resourced so they can do the work. I will invite my fellow speakers, Daria, if you can add some more. Thank you.
Sure, thank you, Muhammad and Sana. Well, what I'm thinking now, what I can add to that, I agree with all you said, Muhammad. Also, maybe for NGOs, it's time, if the question of how to support RLOs, maybe it's time to treat us as real partners, not only like sub-grantee or contractors. Let's apply for big grants together. Let's go in coalition together. Let's have equal opportunity to talk and decide things together. Maybe you can also help us now thinking by sharing this work and advocate also on our behalf, because we know you have INGO usually have bigger access, bigger exposure, bigger relations. So that would be great and helping us advocate. And now we are thinking of the solution. So maybe also it's an invitation to talk more about it, to have more discussions with us on how the support for RRLI might be. I hope we answered this question. Thank you.
Thank you, Daria. Yeah, we got actually many questions around from RLO's partners here saying like, how could we be part of this? So maybe Diana, would you like to speak to this a bit?
Yes, absolutely. So as Robert said, we ask you to please be patient with us while we launch this. It will take us some time to get everything off the ground. We will be as fast as we can to respond to inquiries via email, as fast as we can to respond to chats on social media. Part of what we've been able to do here is resource a team to help us. So we're going to be approaching a hiring process. I think things will feel like they're moving more rapidly 6 months from now. It is our plan to launch the first round of grant making beyond our own coalition RLOs about a year from now. And so we've safeguarded some initial funding already through the Larson Lamb Iconic Impact Award to finance that first round of grant making. And we are already beginning fundraising efforts to increase the RLO to RLO fund so that the third and fourth, fifth rounds of grant making can go further and larger with other rounds of RLOs. It is our hope to reach 45 RLOs during the through the 5-year project period. What you can expect here is that next week, if you signed up for this webinar, you will get an email for how you join a listserv. If you put your name on this listserv, when we are launching the first round of grant making, you will know about it. I also encourage you, if you have direct relationships with our coalition members, talk to them about it, reach out to get more information. The hope, again, is that 1 year from now, we will be making our next round of grant making.
Thank you, Diana. We're very excited to start this and to expand the partnership with so many of you. Speaking of grant making, a question that came to us is that what does achieving this grant mean to RLO serving populations who are still lacking legal rights to work? Will Asylum Access and the coalition RLOs be looking at how to overcome the barriers of livelihoods and employment aside from essential humanitarian assistance? Maybe Muhammad, you could start with this, and if other partners would like to add, please go for it. Muhammad.
Yeah, sorry. Rules and regulations are of course different in different parts of the world. And again, in some places in the world, it is not possible to do this type of work. That's why we need to be talking to the governments of those places to change that. This is when the local knowledge is so important. Talking to local refugee-led initiatives informs you what is acceptable in certain contexts, and what you can do about obstacles on the way. The rules clearly deprive displaced people from of their rights to live in dignity. They prevent them from providing for themselves and their families, and force them to rely entirely on humanitarian assistance. So I think the question should be, why are these unfair practices are there in the first place? So I think, Diana, you want to add some?
Daria, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, just quickly, just also saying that it's a very specific question for each country context. So, but that doesn't mean that we're not gonna support really each other on how to overcome those barriers, what we can do to overcome, and we realize those barriers. And it's already discussed. Like, I mean, we might face that, how we can gonna work around it. But however, we can support each other from our. But this is the strength of this coalition, that we have each other experience and each other competencies, so we can support each other on how to work around those and take from our lessons learned and collective memory and experience. But for sure, we're gonna explore through our networks and in the context in the country, and how we can gonna work to overcome this barrier. Thank you.
Thank you, Daria. Another question we received, which I actually think it has been answered in our remarks, but I just want to, maybe it's good to reiterate, is that, is there a strategy to change the refugee governance system through advocacy and engagement with UNHCR and other institutions? And as I said, I mean, during our discussion, is that, you know, we want to move on this journey with all allies, including UNHCR and other institutional and other institutions. And therefore, one of our main strategies is to engage with allies and to help them and engage with them to help them identify barriers and break down those barriers, in addition to building advocacy and fundraising agendas. So definitely, I don't think we can do it alone, and we're all part of this sector. So we definitely believe in working together. Anyone would like to add to that? I see Diana, your hand raised. Go for it.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit of additional color to what we think some of the first steps around engagement with some of the bigger institutions might be. One of the early things we'd like to do is document how much money, clarify and document how much money really is reaching RLOs. We put out some numbers that are based in research, but the research lacks nuance. And so one of the first things we'd like to do is work with some of the major institutions of power, UNHCR, some of the key foundations focused on this, NGOs, and donor governments to understand how much money is reaching refugee-led organizations. And we think that process of clarifying this is going to help everybody move together in fixing the issues. From there, we would like to work with each of the institutions to really support the development of plans. And that's going to look really different in different places. What are the barriers that are standing in the way? But we're offering our partnership in figuring out how to break down those barriers and call attention to the places where efforts have been inadequate, in alignment with what Mohammed was saying.
Thank you, Diana. I think we have like 2 minutes, so maybe we can take one more question. A question that came to us has to do, which also was mentioned in our discussion, but it's good to highlight again, is that refugees' needs are different from a place to another. So what is common across the coalition partners? And I think this is a very good question we get asked, and it actually speaks exactly to what we believe in. So I'll hand it to Daria to talk about this.
Yeah, sure. And please, colleagues, please add to, if I miss anything, please add after. So what I see, how we see what is common among us is, first, we try to serve the community holistically. We try to deliver holistic services. We try to look at the problem that we are trying to solve from all angles. And plus our proximity to the community help us, I think, to understand more what's needed and how we can move around it. And since we are very close, so basically local actors knows better what to do. Also, another thing is all of us built this experience of this organization by themselves, seeing a problem and just acting upon it. Very simply, people saw problems and start to build something and do something around it. And that's how all organizations of the coalition exist now. Also, I think the major thing among us also is that what we do now is not a project, is not 5 years project, it's our strategy. Sometimes it's our life. So we are looking at it as very long term, and we are looking at this to build it. So yeah, please colleagues add if I missed or if you have any other opinions.
No, that was perfect. Exactly. We don't believe in dictating the what, the who knows what the what is. And at this, we want to end our webinar. We're literally at the hour. So I want to thank you on behalf of the coalition all for joining us. And I want to encourage you to get in touch with us at info@resourcingrlaws.org and follow us on social media at refugees-led. And we are truly and honestly and genuinely looking forward to partner with all of you. So please do get in touch. And thank you for attending this webinar. Have a great days.